Brought to you by Mint Mobile. Stay tuned for a special offer at the end of the show. Hi, and welcome to the Mobile Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Miriam Jouar, and today is Thursday, July 3rd, 2025. And I've got the wonderful Sabrina Ortiz of ZDNet here with me. Hi, Sabrina. How are you?
Hi, y'all. I'm super excited to be here. We have lots of good stuff to talk about this week. And yeah, I'm a fan of the podcast. This is awesome.
Oh, thank you so much for joining me. I'm so excited to have you on. So, hey, listen, it's been nothing week, like, in the sense of nothing, the company launching their products. I think some folks are in London for that. I wasn't, but that's fine. I got the headphones here, so I'll talk about that. For the people watching on Patreon, I'm going to show you these crazy headphones. They look insane. And, I've got some thoughts. And then you probably also have some thoughts. And then the phone itself, I don't have it yet. I think we're going to be getting it soon. Some people have had their hands on it yet. So I have thoughts on that. And then we got a whole bunch of leaks and rumors and Chinese phones. And I mostly want to pick your brain about like AI devices. Like, where do you think we're going with that? Because I've had this conversation with Victoria Song already, but you're doing a come over AI centric. She's doing more of like a wearable centric view, right? So let's chat about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Cool. So headphones, what are your thoughts? What do you think?
Nothing's known for, their distinct look. But yeah. I don't think anything could have really prepared me for like seeing them in over-ear headphone form. I think they're so cool. They're just so neat to look at. They look retro because they have kind of that like cassette feel on the side.
Yes.
So cool. And it's also really hard, I think, for over-ear headphone makers to really do something original that's not just gimmicky, because people want still minimalistic headphones. That's why everybody has like, even the ones I'm wearing right now, like the Sonos Ace, they're always really like nude colors, sleek, and that kind of thing. And this still kind of caters to like that minimalistic, sleek look, but in a completely new, reimagined way, which I thought was awesome.
Marquez used the word wild on his video to describe them. And I think I kind of regretted that I didn't use that word in my review for Hot Hardware, because it's like such a perfect word for it. I mean, it will turn heads for sure. And I think it could be, it could be very, like, some people are going to be like, no way, I'm going to wear this, right? And I think some people are going to be like, oh my God, this is the best thing ever, right? I think what surprised me the most, and for those of you watching right now, and I'll describe it for those listening, is that kind of like that rectangular metal frame, right? Because I was expecting them to be like shaped more like their earbuds, which, actually have the ear here, and I'll pull them out just for the video again. Like, I was kind of expecting them to be shaped like that overall, not just the transparent part, but the whole part, like normal headphones basically, but more oval, more stylized, but I was not expecting a round rectangle, like iPhone style, hardcore, like they leaned right into that. And that was cool. The other thing that I think you totally nailed is the cassette tape thing, right? The first thing I saw when I saw these was like, oh my God, look at that. Like, like if you've used tapes, here are the two reels, and here are the little things that are like the bits and the heads and the caps and the thing go into. And I was like, yeah, okay, so that's pretty nifty. And of course, nothing like the transparency thing. So that I wasn't so surprised. What are your thoughts on the controls? Because I think they're really cool. We used to like touch controls on a lot of headphones, and these have like physical, real controls, and there's a lot of them, and they're very separated. They're not trying to combine everything in one, right?
That's what it is. I think what drew my attention to it is that they're separate, because like even when headphones do have buttons, I'm always like, okay, clicking 3 times for this, like 2 times for that. And it's like, I'm always like, I'm on a call and I hang up the call by accident. And I'm like, oh, what is going on? So I feel like the fact that not only is it a tactile button, but also that they're separate, such a win. It's such a simple thing. And I don't know why people have just like strayed away from multiple buttons, but we need them. High demand, I think, for them. So no, that was awesome.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that, they nailed that. There's basically like, so there's a roller. I'll try to show them on video here. There's a roller here, and that one just spins. Okay. But that's your volume, and you can click on it to play pause, and you long click to change between noise canceling and all that. Then you've got this, it's a paddle. This thing here is not a button. It's actually a paddle. You can click it left and right, and it does left and like previous and next tracks, that kind of stuff. But the thing that's cool about it is, and I haven't managed to find an app that does this. I think this might just be an iPhone, maybe Apple Music only thing right now, or maybe Apple Music on an Android as well, where if you hold it, it does the fast forward like on a tape, like on a CD player or something. I haven't tried that. I haven't made it work yet. And then there's another button up here, which is I want to talk to you about because this is kind of like their AI, their assistant button, but there's other functionality. And then there's a hidden button here for Bluetooth pairing. It's right at the corner there, which I think is basically all the controls. They're all on the right ear cup. And, the rest of the headphones, once you get past the design, are pretty standard in terms of like, size, comfortable ear cushions. The weight is a little on the high side. It's not as high as the crazy AirPod Max, but
yeah, Miriam, I wanted to ask you about the sound because I haven't gotten to listen through them yet. I've just been really looking at the physical design, but I read your review and it sounds like there's some like customization needed. But once you do that, it
that's
sounds
just
pretty
me.
good.
Okay. I always say this on the podcast. I'm a bit of a reluctant audiophile because I worked in audio and video games for many years before I was a journalist, and so I know a lot about audio and I kind of have a very clear idea of what I want things to sound like. But, some headphones, some earbuds kind of nail it out of the box. And I'm like, okay, I don't really need to tweak. Or maybe if I do, it's just a little bit. And, all modern headphones and earbuds have some kind of EQ in the app. And once you change it, it stays with the earbud, right? If you change it, you don't have to like every device have EQ. You just set it once and it stays in the headphones and in the firmware. And it's great. So in this case, I really felt like I couldn't just keep them the way they were stock. And that to me is a sign that something went wrong somewhere along the way because not necessarily on like by default, because many headphones I've loved over the years I've had to tune, but because their earbuds are not like that. Their earbuds are pretty much perfect out of the box. There's minor tweaking required, but with the headphones here, and they have a partnership with this British speaker company that's like 60-year-old, like I've heard about years ago, called KEF, K-E-F, and KEF is reputable for making phenomenal sounding things out of the box. So I was a bit actually knowing how well their earbuds are out of the box. But when I heard the KEF partnership, I was like, oh no. And not because KEF is bad. Like I knew KEF was going to be great, but it felt to me like more like the early days of Hasselblad with OnePlus, where it was really just more marketing than delivering on things. And I feel that's kind of what happened here, even though they're not playing that card, of course, publicly. Because KEF hasn't really made that many headphones. They have 2 pairs right now on their website. They're only maybe 5 to 10 years old on the headphones front. They're a 6-year-old company making speakers, right? They're now owned by a Hong Kong-based company. They got bought in the 80s or 90s. Like it's been a while since they're not a little British startup anymore. So like their speakers are still phenomenal. So I think they have the chops. I think it's just more like Nothing wanted to kind of glob onto something. And, that's why I was a little critical, because I was like, okay, I was knowing that Nothing does such a good job with their earbuds and knowing that KEF is such a good brand, I was like, this could go one of 2 ways: amazing or exactly what I experienced, which was like, this is not as good as I wanted. And so, and again, some of you will find them amazing out of the box because everybody's got their own taste with sound. And, we have a bunch of journalists, talking to each other, and we share like our EQ settings and stuff. So, there's a few of us like Brandon Lee, who does a lot of audio stuff. Daniel Bader at Valnet, who does a lot of, is really into headphones and earbuds, and myself, that are kind of like the people who we're scouting it out every time we get a new pair of earbuds or headphones. Like, okay, what are the best EQ settings? And we kind of put them. Sometimes I put them on my social media as well. If you're listening to the show and you want me to put the EQ on social media for this pair of headphones because you've pre-ordered or whatever, let me know. I'll do it. They won't ship to you until the 15th. And I think you can pre-order starting tomorrow. Yeah. Independence Day. Woohoo.
Speaking of pre-order too, I think it's worth mentioning the price point. I felt like the price point was pretty decent. I mean, obviously
that's the part that I was not, I expected them to undercut everyone else. Yeah. So $299 is $150 less than the Sony's, than the Bose's. It's $200 less than the Apple AirPod Max. Look, that was expected in a way, but considering how good they are once they're EQ'd and tuned. I think you can't go wrong at that price. The question, I think the big question for these headphones are, can you handle, shouting off the rooftops that you are wearing them, right? Because, it's kind of like the early days of the iPod where people were wearing the white buds and almost getting attacked on the streets kind of thing. I don't suggesting that's going to happen, but I'm saying like AirPods Max, still today, you recognize them instantly on the street, right? And there's a lot knockoffs now too. So I expect I'm going to see knockoffs of these. Like, what are your thoughts on, like, I'm perfectly comfortable wearing these because you know me, I've got my own style. I'll just deal. But I can understand some people are going, oh, $299 is great. Oh, Miriam says the sound is good if I EQ them. Great. But then, I don't know if I can wear these,
I think that the look, yes, it's definitely unique. Like off the bat, that's their biggest, I guess, differentiator. But like they still, like I was saying earlier, keep that like minimalistic, modern look, tech look that all these brands, like for example, Apple's known for like their silver, the white, that like sleek.
Yeah.
It still kind of keeps that vibe. So I think it'd be way more challenging for me to get behind, or for me to say like, oh yeah, people will have a harder time using them or wanting to purchase them if they were like a strange color, or if they were like, I don't know, a completely different form factor. But like the squircle shape, we're used to that. And then like the colors, we're used to that, like, again, tech kind of monochrome, sleek look. So it's more just like the transparency of it. And I think that's cool. I don't think it's like a deterrent, at least to me.
No, I agree. I think most people will be okay. Like, but here's a telling story, right? I had them to review. There was an embargo, like we always get the embargoes. It's the first time that I haven't worn a pair of headphones that I was reviewing under embargo in public, because I knew instantly that, especially in San Francisco, somebody in the tech world would recognize them, take a photo of me while I'm at the coffee shop, actively writing the review or something, and then I'd be in trouble. And normally I never have to worry about that. With the Sonos that you're wearing, my Bear Dynamics here, or like my Sony's, like you look at Sony's, like from XM original to the 2, the 3, the 4, the 5, the 6, it's like there are minor differences. If you know what you're talking about, you can tell which version it is. But most people will be like, black wireless noise canceling headphones. Yeah. Oh, exactly. Sony, cool. Like, that's about as far as it'll go, right?
Exactly.
So I think that's kind of what I'm getting at. Is like, you will get noticed, and 100%. It's okay. For me, it's okay. For most people, I think it will be probably okay. But I do feel like, some people are going to be like, no, I don't want to be this flashy or showy. And, but at this price, they did a very good job. And, sadly, I did not get a chance to try them long enough to really assess things like battery life. It seems really solid. It seems to match their claims. I'm taking them on my flight to Samsung in New York, so I'm going to be able to tell them on a flight. That's going to really be telling for the ANC. Right now, I've tested ANC by doing the usual things you do, like vacuuming, doing the dishes and running the water faucet, stuff like that, right? Oh, fan, like air conditioning or whatever, right? So that's the one thing I've done, and that has been fine. I don't think they're going to be as good as the Boses or the Sonys. They're kind of the king of that right now, right?
Yeah, but the humming of the plane, like you said, will definitely put that to the test, and you'll get a good idea.
The other thing I can't tell right now for sure is long-term comfort, right? Like most of the headphones I wear, like these are wired. They're not any wireless or anything, but they're studio headphones. They're big looking, but they're 250 grams. Like they're very light. And so are the Sonys, around 250. These are 325-ish or whatever. And then, the AirPods Max are known for being heavy, and they're about 385 or something, 388 or something like that. So my point is that comfort long term, that's also going to be the test on the flight. It's like 6 hours with them on. Do I feel comfortable? Do they clamp too much, right? Like for these, for example, that I'm wearing right now, I can like bend them back like this, and it's metal on the top, so it'll actually adopt the shape, and so I can like put less force on my ears. And with Sonys, you can do that too. As long as you don't go too crazy and break
How's
them.
the padding? Is the padding like
very comfortable? Okay. Like there's no comfort right now. Seems fine. It's just I need to really wear them for like a flight, that will be. And it's kind of a bummer in a way, because it was like I'd never thought, like I was like, oh, I'm gonna have them for a few days. It'll perfect fine to write a review. But I was like, it's really more so first impressions, because I haven't even barely worn the battery out.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I'm impressed with them. I would say wait for my updates in my review so that I can tell you about comfort and ANC. And then they're really, really good if you play them wired via USB. Like, I rarely noticed such a difference in sound quality between Bluetooth and direct, either wire or direct, like the old headphone jack wire or direct USB. The fact that they do direct USB is really great because if you're editing audio or something, like for video, there's no latency, so you can synchronize things perfectly. That's the reason I use wired headphones myself still, like, because Bluetooth adds just a little bit of latency, and even the best Bluetooth, and that then your video and your audio is out of sync if you're editing, right? So for that, they sound definitely quite a bit better on USB-C than on Bluetooth, at least on AAC Bluetooth, the codec. LDAC, my Mac doesn't have LDAC, so it's hard to compare. Macs don't have it, but my Android phone does. So maybe what I should do is compare USB-C on my Android phone versus LDAC on my Android phone. Again, keep an eye on the review for updates. Yeah.
That's the best way to do it. Yeah. I think no matter what you're testing, always like your opinion a month later of constantly using it, or 3 months later especially, will typically be pretty different. So that's always usually a good rule of thumb to keep in mind. I think
you're right, but I think for phones, like, I can use a phone for 3 days and give you like pretty damn close to perfect review. Like,
that's good.
Because even with 3 days, right? Like, I mean, I would never, like, trust me, this is a nightmare scenario, but I have had to do it. And I reluctantly, because like I want to respect my audience. I want to be at least a week is my minimum usually. But the reason I can do a phone review fully in 3 days is because I can drain the battery with battery tests, right? True. That's the only reason I can get the full picture. But you still don't get the things like, is it annoying in my pocket? Like, these are the things that, like, you still need a week or two to get, or whatever. Or there's that one thing, like the button is like a little too high. You might not notice it right away, but then you're like, But generally, I'd say 90% of a phone review, if I take pictures, if I use it for a day or two, like, because I've been doing so many of them. And I think with headphones, I don't do as many. So,
That's true. I think I'm just like chronically online. So even when I first get a phone and I'm like, oh, I'm reviewing it, I'm using it or trying to use it to substitute my main phone. But it's never quite the same as to, like, once you're done writing, or once you're done with like the, new phone, and you're just like actually doom scrolling for hours, your phone's getting hot, and then you're like, oh my goodness, now it's like, being buggy, that you realize like, okay, actually I should probably update this one thing or the other, because once you start using it, like, actually don't care. It's novelty's done. Like
the poster child for that, where they slow down over time. It's gotten better, but as a Pixel user myself, I really do notice it. But the other thing, to be frank, is as somebody who gets on average one phone in a week, like, I don't review them all. Like, I talk about them on the podcast. I use them kind of as a secondary phones. It's hard for me to set each phone up as my main. So I try to keep my Pixel as my main phone. And then I put like a handful of apps that I know I'm going to always use, like my social media apps, all my productivity work apps, but I don't put my banking apps. I don't put like the electric charging station apps, because I have an entire folder of those, because I review cars as well. And so, like, if I start installing every app, like, I could do a backup and restore, but you know how it is. You have to log into every app. So on Android, so like, no way. Like, so just for you, if you're looking at a review of mine, consider it me using 90% of the phone for 90% of the things. But there are some things I'm not going to do there.
A phone a week is crazy. That's insane.
Well, that's on average, right? Like, they just keep arriving. So, it's like, and some of them are not super critical. Like, for example, like, I have this phone here that I got, that I mentioned last week on the podcast, the Realme P3 Ultra. It's like a $339 phone. It's not high end, but it's, kind of like the TMF by Nothing phone. It's very, very good specs for the money. And so I was like, it's a new line. The P series is new for Realme. Realme is part of like that former BBK group of Oppo and OnePlus. So the OS is very OnePlus and Oppo like, and so are the specs, And so I was like, I need to try to see like, what is Realme doing in this $300 price range? And India is very popular for Realme. So I was like, shout out to all my Indian listeners. All right. So phone, what are your thoughts on the phone? I don't have it. I don't know if you have it.
Nah. I don't have it either, but again, when it comes to the look, love it. I'm a big fan of like the little circle in the corner with like, the LED display there. I think it's so much better of a use of including like lights on the phone than it was before. Like before it was cool, but it was more gimmicky. Like what use am I getting out of like the ring lighting up on the back of the phone?
It's hard to remember the patterns, right? Like they let you set patterns for like, Instagram versus, TikTok or whatever, or like for, friend A versus friend B. But then you're like, oh, what was it? What did I set that as? And la la la.
Yeah. It was also a bit like obnoxious, and that has a horrible connotation. But you remember like, I think it was like in the iPhone 4 was like in its greatest hype, and everybody was setting up the notifications for like the back flashlight camera to go off.
Yes.
And it was just like, somebody would get 3 texts in a row and you'd be like, oh, all right, I'm done. Okay. And then it was kind of the same kind of feel, I feel like, where it's like, okay, now we have to let the whole entire world know that you got a notification by lighting it up. Whereas now it's just like, a cute little display on the back of your phone. I think it's adorable. I love it. So from the looks of it, I think they did great.
Yeah, I think what surprised me was that I was expecting that matrix to be like kind of the size of the wireless charging coil in the center of the back. Like, I was like, because here's the thing, like this matrix idea isn't new, right? Asus on all their gaming phones, the ROG phones, has been doing this for 2 or 3 years now. It's their thing. And you can like have text scroll through and stuff like that. And you can, of course, do the little animation icons because it's a matrix. But it's a little bigger on theirs. It depends on the phone. But I was thinking, because the Nothing glyph before was like kind of this circle around the wireless charging cord that was kind of like really emphasized in the back. I thought they were going to keep that aesthetic going and then put this matrix on top of it somehow. Yeah. But I don't mind it being a smaller thing in the top right corner. And I think, in fact, as you said, with the obnoxious brightness of LED lights, it's probably best that it's a little bit of a smaller thing. But overall, I have no issues with the phone's design. I think it's, I love their design language, like the headphones. I think it's delightful. This is, I think, less of a, because you're not wearing it like a watch or glasses or headphones. I think it's a bit less, controversial in terms of its design because you're going to be holding it, possibly putting it in a case or whatever. Yeah. But I think the price is pretty solid for the specs. And they're not skimping on anything. The only thing that, some people here, I know I'm listening to you already yelling in the background there and I complain about the 8 Elite. It doesn't have an 8 Elite. And you know what? Look, I agree with you that at $799, considering you can buy a Galaxy S25 for $799 that has an 8 Elite. There are other phones out there that have 8 Elite for around that price. And yes, you could argue that they could have done that, but considering they're a smaller company and it's, that chip is probably really expensive. I think the 8S Gen 4 is a solid choice and you're not going to be disappointed. Folks, this is basically last year's 8 Gen 3, but on steroids, like the one, the one they cranked up to 11 with the faster clock speeds and everything. Come on.
That's what I was about to mention. I was about to say, if you weren't really disappointed with the predecessor, you won't be disappointed now. It's basically the same thing with some upgrades. So, I
mean, the phone 2 was not even close to being as good of like flagship-ish as this is. Like this is much closer to a flagship than Nothing's ever gotten, right? And I think in that sense, kudos. And it's also the thinnest phone they've made so far, which because they have that transparency layer, with all that stuff underneath, that adds a bit of thickness to the phone. And their previous phones, I don't know if you noticed, Sabrina, they were kind of chunky. Like, yeah, this is progress. Yeah. Plus, I'm glad everything is there. 65-watt charging, a silicon carbon battery, so tons of battery life. You got periscope telephoto, 4 50-megapixel sensors here. All the important sensors have OIS, the telephoto and the main. Like all the stuff we want. 15-watt wireless charging. I mean, the display looks gorgeous. I mean, if you want, and here's the other thing I think a lot of people I'm talking about, I don't know how much you've used the Nothing phones, but the OS is amazing. Their OS is such a pure interpretation of Google, but without being too simple, like added their flavor, that matrix design is all over the UI. It's really, really good. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think Nothing's biggest appeal is 100% the look, the design. And I do love that they carry through like what you see when you're looking at the device in their OS too. So I think it's like one of those phones that if it appeals to you, if you're the right audience for it, if you're the right audience for their products, you'll love it, right? Because it's everything, whether it's the headphones, the earbuds, the actual phone, they all keep the same look and feel and unique design that you really can't get from other competitors. So yeah, I think that they did a solid job of this launch.
Yeah, and I will link to Praki's awesome hands-on on ZDNet. And, I think that they've also made it so that you can actually program these things if you want to. Like there's going to be an interface like there was for Glyph where you could assign it to do different things for different people and different apps. You'll be able to do that. But it's going to be in Matrix. So it's going to be a lot more fun. And I'm excited about that because I'm like, oh, wow, that's going to be open up some actually useful customizations where, like you can flash the first letter of the name of the person and make it like do some, like if it's S for Sabrina, S turns into like, I don't know, a fish or something cool, like an animation,
Yeah. And even just funner things, like I was even seeing in Prakar's one of the photos he included had like a little 8-ball on the corner. Like how cute! I feel like people like to customize their phones. That's why we all have like crazy phone cases most of the time, or at least on your main phone. So like it's fun. Why not? It's funner than just again the display. So I'm here for it.
Yeah, it's totally great. So that's it for Nothing. I mean, you'll have to stay tuned for my review at some point of the phone. Unfortunately, Samsung's going to get in the way because, and I will talk about some of the most recent leaks there. I think it's very exciting. I want to talk to you about the Meta Oakley smart glasses because I didn't really cover them on the show, first of all. And, I love wearable devices. So you've obviously had some time with them. And I would like to hear your thoughts. And can you give us a quick kind of rundown on how better they are than the Meta Ray-Bans? Because obviously they're a newer product, so the tech is newer. Run us through. And also, what do you think of the design, the aesthetics? Because Oakley, I feel, is also very polarizing, kind of like the headphones from Nothing are very polarized. Some people are going to be like, no way. Because, Oakley's got a vibe. Like Ray-Ban has a vibe. But I feel like Ray-Ban's vibe is way more accessible and, reaches a broader audience than Oakley's. I could be wrong, though.
Yeah, no, I'm super excited about these Oakley version because yes, Oakley, like you mentioned, has a very specific look, but I think that's why the specs are as good as they are because they're trying to reach like this like more sporty, athletic, outdoorsy audience, which I think is like the perfect candidate, right, for these type of smart glasses because you need to be hands off most of the time for these activities. First of all, so having like that AI assistant will actually be more useful than like me when I'm like washing dishes and I'm like, okay, like, yeah, sure, I'll ask a question or two, but that's not like the best use of it, right? Like I could just dry my hands and use my phone, but if I'm like riding a bike, I can't do that. And also just like the specs, like the video quality will be significantly better now, which again, if you're doing something really cool outdoorsy, like again, if you want to get your run with a view, you're on a hike, anything like that, you're going to want high quality video. So that makes total sense. The biggest upgrade that I think is like game changing is the battery. They basically doubled it.
Wow.
So right now it's like on a good use, you get like 4 hours and now you're supposed to be getting 8, which is a huge difference because I feel like that lasts you through a day, right? So whether that's like a standard day in the office, a standard day of any activity, I feel like 8 hours is pretty much like a good day's run compared to the 4 hours where it's happened to me so many times. I'm wearing the Meta Ray-Bans and then like right when I need them, like I'll get on the train or I'll leave the apartment and I'm like, ugh, they died. So I think that's the biggest and the most exciting upgrade to me. And also in terms of looks, I was expecting the very like sporty, like
I was not expecting to be as low key kind of for Oakley, right?
Exactly. And if you still want that like really like that standard or like I guess look that they're known for with like the orange and like the shiny and all that, they still have options like that. If that's what you're into, I personally would probably opt for just like the more standard looking ones. And again, I'm not an super outdoorsy or athletic person at all, but because of all of these improved specs, especially the battery life, I think they're totally worth considering if you've been wanting to get,
they're also more expensive, right? So I think it's interesting that they aimed Oakley to be a more premium product than Ray-Ban.
Yes.
Do you think there's a good reason for that? Do you think it's just because the tech is better and they're like, and of course tariffs and all that? Or do you think it's just also their positioning in terms of like marketing?
I think the tech is better, and also I was surprised that they're not that much more expensive. So when they first launched, the first ones are going to be retailing, I think it was like $500, $499. which is expensive. Because again, the highest level Meta Ray-Bans are $300 at the moment. But then they said that later on, they will be releasing some of the Oakley version ones that are $399. So that's only $100 more, and you're getting, again, double the battery life. I think you can shoot up to like 3K video, like just all these things that just make them so much better smart glasses that I think it's worth. Like if you're spending, if you're willing to spend the 300, why not spend the extra 100 for that much better improvement?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah.
So I would say that the price change is definitely because of the specs. And also I think it makes sense that they're putting these better specs in Oakley's, who are Oakley users, typically, like, again, these outdoorsy, athletic crowd who could really benefit from the improved specs here.
That makes sense. And, I want to have a discussion with you kind of about like AI on these products, and, also including we didn't talk about the AI button on Nothing, but we can all roll it together. And related to that, we have some news from OnePlus. Well, it's a leak for their watch that they announced they're coming out with a new watch and earbuds on 8th of July. And the Watch 3 43 millimeters, so the smaller version of the Watch 3, we've now seen leaks of it. And, that doesn't matter which watch we're talking about, but I'm kind of curious to hear your thoughts on like, headphones, glasses, watches. Where do you think AI is going to develop fastest? And is it going to be voice only, or is it going to, for some, like for headphones, it has to be voice only, but for the watch, it could use a display. For glasses that have a display, some of them won't, some of them will in the future, it could use a display. Where do you see the things going with that? Like, where do you think the best potential application is right now, so we can get this off the ground and actually like refine it? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, thank you so much. I love this question. I think we're already seeing this a lot with wearables, that the most practical implementation of AI that could actually, I think, bring users the most value at the moment is incorporating it into any health tracking metrics, right? Because that's the definition of, there's so much data, there's so much to analyze and compile and sift through. And then with AI, you could, use all that data, pull insights, and then maybe have a conversational answer if the conversation with the user, answering any questions they may have. And we're seeing like nearly every single wearable, whether it's a watch, it's a ring, any type of biometric tracker, use that kind of capability already, the Whoop, whatever it may be. But that's like less flashy, right? So I think in terms of more like innovative, future looking, I really do think that the smart glasses space is going to boom, because that's a perfect vehicle for multimodal assistance, right? Because the cameras could see what you're seeing. So now instead of me having to like pull out my phone and maybe show ChatGPT, which I do all the time, I mapped my main phone's an iPhone 16 Pro, and I mapped the control button to ChatGPT Plus, so that I could just click on it, open it, and like be like, hey, and show it whatever, so I could get assistance everywhere I go.
Nice. Right on.
So I'm already a big fan of multimodal assistance, but with the glasses, so much more helpful, right? You don't even have to click it. You could just talk to it, and then it could do it and see exactly from your perspective, which I think is huge. And then also, of course, you could talk to it. So then you get the voice. You could hear it, which then again, you get voice both ways. And then I'm sure, especially as these become better integrated, you'll be able to also leverage, I'm sure, text, like, hey, can you compose this email and maybe,
for sure,
send this there. So I think it's just the perfect vehicle for all three. And I think it's a better way to get that everyday assistance than like these pens or pins or bands. And because that's another device that you have to now worry about. Maybe I'm biased because I am a glass like regular glasses user. So I'm always wearing glasses right now. I'm wearing contacts. So it's like, I'm already used to wearing it. So maybe for me, that's why I'm like, oh, like, yeah, that's just a perfect, it doesn't feel like you're wearing an extra thing, but to carry another like pendant or to carry like a pin to do all these things for you, it's like another thing I have to carry around with me.
And charge.
And charge. You're so right. And
charge. Connect to your phone or connect to the internet somehow.
And who's going to guarantee too that like if you're wearing this pin, it's always going to get the right point of view? Like my hair is going to get in the way. I'm going to have like a bouquet in the way of flowers at the restaurant. Like, something's always going to be in the way. Whereas like my eyes, like hopefully my point of view will never really be obstructed, because then that means I can't see in real life either,
Right,
you know?
right, yeah.
So I'm excited for that. I think there's some exciting ones other than, Meta, like the Google ones that I'm sure you may have demoed at
And IO,
IO, which were awesome. Those
amazing.
were so, If those come out anytime soon, with their color display, in lens display and everything, I think those could really be a game changer. And there's some startups doing cool things, like the holiday ones are pretty awesome. Or at least from my brief demos. I know they're shipping me out another unit soon, so to see what the actual final product looks like. But yeah.
I think the thing you touched on, which I think is really exciting to me as well, I think as for people who wear glasses regularly, I think that works. Also, you have the option to have a display added. So if you want, you can have it just audio only, right? Audio and camera only. But you can also say hey, how about we add a display to this and then have more functionality again? And you can't really do that with a pin. I mean, this projections thing that, the Humane AI pin didn't really work. The smartwatch could be a thing, but it doesn't have the visual context of seeing what you're seeing properly unless you kind of somehow, I don't know, had a camera pointing, I don't know, it'd be weird. But the point is you could potentially say, hey, I only want to do this from time to time. And, maybe you put the camera on the edge and it's like if I hold my wrist like that, the watch is flat and it just points outward and it can see what I see briefly. And maybe that's actually a good thing because most of the time it's under your sleeve and it's private. I don't know. There are some advantages there, but I think for the challenge for us who are glasses wearers and have kind of embraced that, right, is that some people really hate wearing glasses and some people need glasses and still don't want glasses and wear contacts or whatever. And totally, look, I respect all that. I'm just saying that's a preference and I totally get it. But I think for those people, it's going to be way harder to get into AI, I feel, because I actually think that you're right. The glasses are the ultimate AI device. And we had to see people wearing glasses that normally don't even wear them at all. In the same way people wear Ray-Bans, Meta Ray-Bans right now to document, social media stuff, and they're just wearing the sunglasses. They don't need a prescription. I have a pair of Meta Ray-Bans and I can't wear them right now because I need a prescription for them because I can't really use them. It's a nice party trick to put them on for a second and walk around the room and take a TikTok video or something. But it's another thing if I want to wear them for part of the day and drive at the same time or whatever it might be, because I need to get prescription lenses for them, right? And so I think there's an obstacle with the whole prescription thing. And there's an obstacle for those who don't want to wear glasses. But I think you're right. Eventually, it'll iron itself out. And then for those who don't want it at all, there might be pins. There might be smartwatches. But I think more importantly, headphones also are the really other option. You could put a camera on each ear cup, right? And kind of replicate what you have with the Meta glasses. And you have that voice assistant, the speaker, the fact that you can talk and be heard and hear. I think earbuds are another area that I think, we've all seen the movie Her, but I think that, we could totally do that. And that's what Nothing's doing with this extra button. So they have a feature on their phones, starting with the phone 3A series, the mid-rangers that came out around Mobile Congress, followed by the CMF phone 2 Pro, and then now the phone 3, which is called Essential Space. And the way it works is it's a button, a dedicated AI button on the phone right below the power lock key. It's shaped different, so you're not touching power lock. It's actually very clever. And if you press it, it brings up a little thing on your screen where you can type, first of all, it does a screen. If you're not on the home screen, it does a screenshot of whatever's on the screen. And it lets you type in text or dictate something as a note, basically, for that screenshot, and puts it in kind of like what Moto AI is doing on the Razors, where they have the AI button, and it kind of puts it in their own little AI hub. And then you can double tap. I can't remember which action is, if double tap or long tap, but one of these two brings you to the actual hub where you can see all the stuff you've captured and query it and say hey, where was that restaurant with the cool palm trees? And it'll, uses whatever AI in the background to do it. And then there's also a way to immediately start recording a voice note. And I can't remember which one is the long press and the double press, but that's another option. And so what they've done is with the Nothing headphones, they've actually mapped this extra button. You can map this extra button if you have a Nothing phone that supports the hub. You can map that extra button to do that directly on the headphones. So long press to do a voice memo, short press to just bring up the interface, double press to bring up the entire hub. And then you can query it by voice. So it's actually very, very cool because there's no smarts in the headphones. It's all on your phone, but it's mapping the same button to the headphones. And so, with Meta Ray Ban, there's similar features now, right? Like where you can query the AI as you talk and ask these questions. Smartwatches all have Assistant, and we all know, the Android Wear OS ones. And of course, Apple with Siri, and we're waiting for Siri to get smarter, but I'm sure it's coming. But the point is, we're getting Gemini on our Android watches very soon, right? And I've been using Gemini because I'm a Pixel user, right? Obviously, like the stuff where you said, you mapped your action button on your iPhone to bring up ChatGPT Plus. For me, it's mapped to Gemini, and I've got the Ultra subscription or whatever, so I can like point at video or something like you're doing, right? I don't actually use a button on my phone for that because I'm old school. I want my power button to still be a power button, but I do it by just, saying, the keyword that I won't say right now. And then we start having a conversation. So I think to me, that's kind of like where we're at. I think, I'm all for experimenting, even with pins and brooches if you need to. But I kind of feel like glasses are the holy grail, especially because you can add a single display, a single monochrome or color display, dual displays, monochrome or color, and then have an immersive experience like X-Real, where the glasses can even be dimmed, and then it almost becomes like VR. I just think there's such a broad range. We could see devices that are as cheap as $100 eventually, that just have speaker mic, a simple camera, and connected to your phone for everything, all the way to $1,000, super high end that you have connected to the internet directly. You don't need your phone with you at all. I think we're going to get to that. And I think we're going to get to that where it looks cool, like my glasses, like your glasses when you're wearing them. And people are going to be and it's going to be with partnerships, with all these big glasses brands. And I think that's exciting to me. I'm looking forward to it.
Me too. And I think it's also cool that I think as society or as the general public, we've somewhat accepted the fact that wearing some form of a headset was the future of tech, right? With the XR, AR craze, of course, everybody immediately said okay, who's going to walk around with this whole big thing, heavy, clunky thing everywhere? But we all kind of at one point accepted Ready Player One, whether it's sci-fi or not, or just, again, all the craze that there was around it, that the future of technology might rely on you wearing something over your eyes. So I think if anything, once we accepted that and now being and there's something really light and normal looking, regular glasses that could bring you some of those capabilities, I think is almost going to make it really accessible, I think, for people to be okay, yeah, sure, I'll make that leap, because I was thinking about making the leap to an AR headset, but those were too huge. This is more normal, so let me make the leap here. You know what I mean?
100%. I think VR is really cool, but I will not. I can wear one for 5 minutes, and I get sweaty and uncomfortable. And it doesn't matter which one. Doesn't matter if it's a cheap one or an expensive one. Even Vision Pro is lovely. I really like what they've done, but no way. And then price, of course. But my point is, you're right. I think the glasses are it. The headphones are also a very good candidate. And I think the third potential candidate for some people is going to be watches, because everybody's wearing a watch of some kind. Oh, not everyone, but a lot of people. And, it's you're going to wear one of them, and perhaps they can complement each other. You never know. That would be the, kind of the same way as Samsung's Galaxy Ring. When you're wearing a Galaxy watch, the battery life improves on both because they kind of split the workload, basically. That kind of smarts, I think, is going to be very, very clever. And whoever nails this first, I think, is going to be... I feel like right now, Google and Samsung have a good shot at it with Muhan, the VR headset. But I'm thinking more about the glasses. And assuming it's a partnership with Samsung, which I think makes the most sense right now. And then, Apple... I think they kind of got distracted with Vision Pro to be a VR headset. I think they should have gone straight into the glasses, in my opinion. Though arguably, as somebody who used to make video games and was a developer, I can understand how, if you need to get developers going, because Apple's entire ecosystem has always been based on getting the developers to make apps, right? That's why the best phone apps, in my opinion, even though I'm not primarily an iPhone user, the best phone apps are on iPhone. The best tablet apps are on iPad. I'm a Mac user, and I love my Mac, and I've had Macs for 20 years. And, as soon as I could afford one, I basically went into it. And it's for a reason, even though I'm a nerd. Like I have Windows PCs, I have Linux machines, please. I'm that kind of masochist. So like, trust me, when I say like, I love the Mac above everything else, there's a good reason. I've tried it all, right? And I love Android better than iOS primarily because a workflow for me is habit and it works better. I can totally work on an iPhone. There are some limitations still, but I think they've gotten way better. But I also understand how many of our colleagues, yourself included, have the iPhone as their main phone simply because, messages and, like a whole bunch of ecosystem grab, tie in with their families and then, their, ecosystem at home or whatever. And that's totally cool. For me, I thankfully managed to stay out of that best I could. My spouse
it's a wall garden. I'm so happy for you.
It's really insane. My spouse has an iPhone, but they're also like me. They don't tend to subscribe to any of the Apple stuff. They kind of do their own thing. They have a lot of the Google apps on there. And then they also have a folding phone. They have a Razr. So they, like two phones because they live in two places. And so, like it's two countries, two SIMs, whatever. The point is that, they're using Android and they don't like it, but they love the folding form factor, I think everybody's waiting for a folding iPhone. Unfortunately, right now it looks like it's coming, but it's going to be a fold style, not a flip style. I think that's a tragic mistake for Apple because they're like, don't get me wrong, I'm on the team fold. Yeah, and I love flips, but for me as a productivity
I think I'm team
nerd,
flip.
Yeah, and I get that, and I love the flips too. But I'm just saying, like Apple needed to make a flip, not a fold. Like, come on, like how do you not see? Like it's the same as like Apple needed to make glasses, not a VR headset. Like how do you not see that, right? Like you nailed the Apple Watch. Come on, like you nailed the earbuds. You've done a very good job with those too. I don't know. It's very interesting. But yeah, I feel like honestly, there's some exciting times ahead. And I think that if we want AI to improve, to be less problematic in the sense of especially things like, making stuff up, etc., we need to use it more and more and more. And to use it more and more, I think we need devices that make it super accessible, but actually give you the reward that you can trust and count on it too. And we're not quite there yet. And
no,
I think that, and you're going to say, well, I don't want to be a guinea pig, right? I don't want to, but I'm like, that's how it works. Like, it's like children learn to walk by looking around them.
100%.
And, you know what I'm saying? Like,
I'm so surprised that from people I speak to, like my generation of, like Gen Z, of folks are so hesitant about using AI and embracing it. Cause I'm like, didn't we live through every single major technological evolution, and every single one was met with the same kind of thing, right? Like my generation, when we were kids, we still remember like dinosaur TVs, and we still remember like dinosaur computers, flip phones, like the emergence of a smartphone. Like we lived through that, like the shift towards like really like internet, everything. We basically lived through that too. So it's like, I don't understand why everybody's so hesitant. Cause like, don't you
I think it's the trust in the tech companies, because right now the tech world is toxic. Like, let's be real, right? I mean, that's the problem, right? Like they take your data without telling you. They use the artist copyrighted data without to train models. Like, I think that we could have all done this in a much more symbiotic way and in a much more, and I think people are put off by that. And, unfortunately, the tech industry has been kind of associated with a lot of the politics that are going on right now.
100%.
And if you're young, you're seeing the problems and you're like, I don't want to be a part of that. And so you kind of push tech away, right? You and I are different because we're nerds. We thrive on that stuff.
We're in it, yeah.
Right? I don't want to call you a nerd like in a bad way. Like I'm just saying we are,
I'll
we
take
are
it.
tech people. And in that sense, we're fascinated by that stuff. But I think that there is a real thing to be said about like how technology, like when I was in tech 20 years ago, everything was possible. People, the CEOs of companies, they would donate money to art organizations and social causes. And there was like this really huge symbiosis between the community, society, and technology. And they weren't greedy all the time about everything. And I think now you look at it and you're like, yeah. And then AI came out of this, in the middle of all this greed and weirdness, and I can see how people are hesitant. And but yeah, I think we need better actors. I think these companies need to be a little more responsible. I'm for like the pursuit of this technology, but can we just be more? And I think the problem is the first company who does it is gonna basically fail because you need to be aggro to get, you know what I'm saying? Like, like the whole, it's self-perpetuating like capitalism to the extreme or whatever you want to call it. And so nobody's going to take the first step to be like, we're going to be an ethical AI company.
That's true. But I think that's where, and also I realize that in the current times we live in, this might be especially difficult to ask. But I think that that's why we need legislation really to come in and to set some ground rules. Again, this is such a nascent space and such an evolving space that we need somebody to set some ground rules. Again, like we have it for everything else, right?
Yeah.
Like we need something that's just a bar, right? Like even if it's a bare minimum, but like something that like kind of sets the tone for what people have to say, and something that like people have to adhere to. All these companies have to adhere to, and that's what I think makes it exciting about the time we're living in. Like we will see really monumental decisions be made probably within the next year, 2 years, that impact the entire future of how AI evolves, which is exciting.
And I think also, rejecting it means that we can't evolve and we can't make it better. Right now, it's 100%. Not very good. It's not very good. Let's be real. But it could be better, and we need to use it to get better. And I'm willing to be that guinea pig. But I understand if you who are listening, it's not, and it's okay. Sit on the sidelines. We'll make it work for you. We'll try. Moving on to some like newsy items. I'm going to go through them a little rapidly here, but basically, I mentioned the OnePlus Watch 3 43mm leaked. I'll put a GSM Marina article there. We've got some key specs in there. It's pretty much what you'd expect. It's just, you're going to get a little bit smaller display, a little less battery life, but the battery life is so good on Watch 3 that I think you'll be very happy. If you want a smaller watch, this is going to be pretty great for Android Wear OS watch.
And I feel like they needed a small watch. A lot of people have small wrists. A lot of people don't want a big screen. So I think that's overall a win.
It's going to be great. We've also seen camera specs leaked for the Pixel 10 Pro series. And, the only takeaway here is they're the same cameras as last year, which I personally don't have a problem with, because here the biggest problem I have with my Pixels all the time now. Now that they've made the design really great with the Pixel 9 series and they're keeping that design, the Tensor is the biggest problem for me. Like, I don't like Tensor. And if Tensor G5 is better, which I think it will be, that means you're getting basically the same as the Pixel 9 series, but you're getting better battery life, better performance, better, everything. The cameras can stay the same. Hopefully the batteries get a little bigger. The design can stay the same. You're not going to buy a new Pixel every year, so this is perfectly fine. But I just, some people are like, oh, well, they're not. But think about it. Google's always been kind of resting on their software chops for cameras, right? Like, it wasn't until Pixel. Yeah, it was until Pixel 6. From Pixel 1 to Pixel 6, they use the same main sensor pretty much. I mean, they added OIS and Pixel 2 series, etc. But like, it was basically the same hardware for the cameras. And so, well, like, we have had a few minor changes since 6. And so 9 is pretty damn great. So why don't we just keep it the way it is and go with that? And we also already know that the Pixel 10 base model will have a telephoto now added. So we're getting some extra features. This is just the Pro Series spec leak. So I'll put a link to that. And then what I'm really excited about, and again, this is leaked before, but it's now been more and more leaks about the dimension of the Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 7. And also we have the dimension of the Z Flip 7. Turns out the Z Flip 7 might be one of the thinner and smaller folding flip phones yet. That's fine. But the Fold is what I'm excited about, because the Z Fold 6, when I reviewed it, I was like, considering I have all these Chinese folding phones in my hands and available, I was like, guys, you're like so behind here. Come on. This is not a solid effort for Samsung. And so seeing these specs leak, is telling me like this, just to give you an idea, I have this phone here called the Oppo Find N5. The Oppo Find N5 is essentially what the OnePlus Open 2 would have been. It's the successor, because, when the OnePlus Open came out, it sold in the rest of the world as the Oppo Find N3. And, they always skip the number 4. And so this is the thinnest, it's in a case right now, but if you look really close, this is currently the thinnest folding phone. And guess what? Z Fold 7 is the same thickness as this Oppo. So 4.2 millimeters open, 8.9 millimeters closed. It's the same thickness when closed as basically an iPhone Max or a Pixel XL or whatever, right? Like, or a Galaxy Ultra, right? So that's great. So Samsung doing that, I'm excited about. I can't wait. And then, speaking of that, of course, somebody's already beat them to the punch because we know that Honor won the title last year with the V3. Magic V3 was the thinnest phone, and it got beaten by that Oppo I just showed you. And then Samsung's matching that. But now Honor's coming out, they just released their V5, and they're championing it again. So this one's even thinner at 8.8 millimeters close, just 1 millimeter, whatever.
Yeah, say 1, yeah.
0.1, not even 1, 0.1.
Yeah.
Interesting. And again, the V5 has an 8 Elite instead of 8 Gen 3 last year, and has essentially the same camera system. It has a bigger silicon carbon battery. Is one of the first phones with silicon carbon back in the day. Very evolutionary, but again, Honor has the crown. So I will link to that and you guys can check it out. What are your thoughts on this kind of thinness battle that's happening, especially now that we have the Galaxy S25 Edge, which I actually really liked. I accepted the fact that the battery was going to be smaller, and it's actually not that bad, to be honest. So what are your thoughts in general on this battle of thinness?
I'm excited because I think phones have kept getting, and I think you and I were chatting about this before too, they keep just getting bigger. And I don't know if there's a need for it or an actual demand for it. Obviously, the need is, to house all of the really advanced features and components and all that these phones now have. But other than that, I don't think that, like, in terms of form factor, right? Like there's no demand. I don't think there's many people saying like, yes, I want my phone to be heavier or I want my phone to be thicker. So I think that it's really exciting to see that people are working on getting back to slimmer, more compact phones that easily fit into your pocket. I'm curious to see how people react to it, though, because we've seen some manufacturers put out phones that are supposed to appeal to being smaller and then them not really getting that much demand. So I wonder, again, if people actually care, because they may not, but I myself am really excited about seeing how they're getting slimmer. They're going to be able to fit into my pocket more nicely. And especially with foldables and with both the Flip and foldables, I think that's like a must. If anything needs to be slim, those need to be slim, because you don't want to be carrying two smartphones basically sandwiched together in your pocket. So yeah, it's exciting.
You want, basically, if you have a fold, not a Flip, but if you have a fold, you want it to be ideally the size of a regular phone, and then you open it up when you want to be more productive. And I think, starting last year with the V3 from Honor, we got there. And then, OnePlus Open was close. Pixel 9 Pro Fold is close. Samsung wasn't in the game. And now Samsung's going to be in the game. And of course, Honor's beating them with V5. And then this Oppo that I have that came out around MWC is still a phenomenally thin phone. So this is cool. I think this is exciting. And I'm all for it. And I think it's going to stabilize. I think we're going to get to a point where, we're not even thinking about thinness of folding phone. This is going to be like, yeah, of course they're that size, and that's good. That's normalization. And in the same sense, I also feel that a 5.8 or 5 millimeter, like the upcoming, iPhone 17 Air, these thin, large screen phones make sense to me because, I think 5 years from now, we're going to look back and go like, yeah, all the phones are this thickness, but the battery technologies with silicon carbon and stuff has made it so now you can actually use them and have great battery life, like 2 day plus, like a normal flagship today has. And we'll be able to make the cameras thinner and stuff, and it'll be just normal, and that's good because lighter, smaller, thinner phones are important. And we've talked about lighter and thinner, because the folding phones are kind of thriving for that. But we're going to talk in a second about smaller too, I think is an important thing. But before we do quickly, we've been talking about this for 3 or 4 episodes now because the leaks have been all over the place. Xiaomi has a flip phone out. This is their 2nd gen. It's the Mix Flip 2. There is a Mix Flip. I have it. The Mix Flip last year was pretty solid. It very much looks like a Razor basically, but the cameras are located in a different spot. The whole thing is a screen. The cameras are jutting out in the front. Nothing new there. Nothing very exciting. Last year's had a few deficiencies. It had no wireless charging, and it had the two cameras were kind of like, remember the Razr the Razr Plus when it dropped the ultra wide and made a crappy telephoto instead, and we were all angry and mad, and we like pulled out our pitchforks and we're like, Razr, Moto, what are you doing? And so that same thing happened with the Xiaomi last year. So this new one, they corrected that. They added wireless charging, and they switched the cameras back to like an ultra wide and a really decent main that can zoom up quite a bit. So if you're in Asia and you don't want a Razr, this is a very solid alternative because it's basically the same form factor. It looks very similar. It has the same kind of specs, but it's Xiaomi with Xiaomi's amazing ecosystem. You know, if you're in China, you can have your car talk to your phone and all that being in one beautiful, magical, silo. So yeah, I think some markets are getting this phone. I'll see if I can get a review in it because just I have to try it out. But yeah, stay tuned for that. So, speaking of small compact phones, are you a fan of smaller phones?
I am.
I mean, smaller is kind of a loaded word now, right?
Yes.
Because there's no iPhone mini was kind of the ultimate small phone.
Yes, because even the 16E, I think it's just lighter, right? But it's like
actually the 16E is exactly pretty much the same size as 16 and 16 Pro. It's just 6.3 inches, and I think that's what we call small now. But if you think about it, that's really big. Like mini was 5.8 or something, and then there were some phones for a while. They're around at 6.1 and 6.0. I think that's a sweet spot. 6 is a sweet spot for a small phone, in my opinion. Especially now that we can make the bezels super thin and the whole thing is screen, right? The chassis can be smaller, but 6.3 is it's not that much smaller than 6.5, 6.6, 6.7, which is what the big flagships are. So
yeah, I like them. I feel like there's a space and there's room there's a specific demographic of people for them, right? Like people who just want a phone for the sake of having a phone that does the things they need to do, which is technically kind of the audience of like the 16E. I think a smaller phone or mini makes so much sense. I think for people, again, like me, who are chronically enlightened and are using their phones for, a ton of different things, whether you're editing video, editing photo, now everybody's, a content creator to some degree, then you might probably benefit from the added screen size of like the bigger phones. But I think having said that, there's a really big demographic of people who could really benefit from smaller phones, and they're kind of being neglected right now, I feel like, by the manufacturers across the board. But
yeah, and honestly, I can understand how Apple decide, hey, we're not making enough money on this, let's not do this anymore, and people will have to deal because it's like we don't have a flip phone yet. People have to deal, and I like that Apple doesn't have a proliferation of models, although it's getting there with the E16E now. We got 16E, 16 Plus, 16 Pro, 16 Pro Max. That's a lot of phones. And then we're going to get an Air soon. But hear me out. I think a mini would still fit in the lineup, and a flip and a fold. And, maybe they can consolidate a little bit in the middle of there. They can have like the 16 be the 16E or something. I don't know, like have the 16 start at a lower, there's going to be 17 now, but you follow. It'll start that at a lower point, and then, I don't know, we'll see. But the Chinese phone manufacturers, the Android universe has no reason not to make a 6-inch phone. And that's kind of why, like, the last really good small compact-ish phone that we had, well, Sony made a bunch back in the day, and they were amazing. They're called the whatever Xperia something compact, very, very appropriately named. This was like about 5-10 years ago. And then the most recent is Asus with the Zenfone, I think the 10 and the 9 before that. And they were really quite compact and fully fledged Android flagship with all the cameras and all the Snapdragon goodness and good battery life and everything. Marquez kept giving them awards on his thing every year, and I've talked to many people who really love these phones, and we haven't seen that. So the latest we've seen, I have this OnePlus here, the OnePlus 13S. It's in a case. I've shown it before. It's a 6.3-inch OnePlus 13. It's not sold in North America. It's in India. This is the India model. I got OnePlus to send it to me because I wanted to try it out. And it's essentially a OnePlus 13, like the one that we've all love and can buy at our local Best Buy, but with a smaller 6.3-inch display. And it also is lacking an ultra-wide, which is really weird. It has a main and a telephoto, which, again, who does that? Can we stop with that? Like, get rid of the telephoto if you have to get rid of something. Put a bigger sensor in there for the main so you can zoom in a bit more and compensates. But the ultra-wide, you can zoom in, you can get closer, you can physically move closer to something most of the time. You can't physically back into a wall more. Anyway, so there's a bunch of Chinese phones that are coming to other markets right now that are these 6.3 inch small in quote phones. And that OnePlus 13S, also known as the 13T in China, is one of them. Then there is one from Oppo as well. And I don't have that one. And then there is one from Vivo that was just announced. And that one's cool because it's got the same Zeiss camera system that their big bad, the X series flagship has. And so we haven't really seen that on their compact phones yet. And the rest of the specs are pretty solid. It's got last year's Dimensity 9300 Plus, which is kind of like, think 8 Gen 3 in terms of performance for the processor. So they kind of kept it a little more affordable. And also, I think because it runs cooler, that chip, they don't have to worry about the thermals as much, all putting like all the cooling stuff in there if you want to play games. But the kicker is they put a silicon carbon battery in that sucker. And holy crap balls, it's got a 6500. That's the same size battery as a OnePlus 13 regular in a 0.3 inch smaller phone. So I'm excited about that. What do you think of a phone that has incredible cameras, is really compact, and is a flagship?
That'd be great.
Right?
I think that'd be great. I think there's I think there's a big audience for that.
I mean, we have the Pixel 9 Pro for that. The Pixel 9 Pro and the iPhone 16 Pro are 6.3 inch phones that are compact, and I have all the flagship specs. So it exists in our market. It's just, it doesn't exist with enough variety, I feel like. We need more options. Like Samsung technically has that with the S25, right? It's also 6.3 or whatever, close to that. But I feel like we can go smaller. I want like...
Yeah. No, I agree.
Yeah.
I totally agree. I don't know when we strayed away so far from normal sized, like fit in your palm of your hand, but like actually in the palm of your, everybody says like, oh, if it's comfortable in your palm of your hand, but it's like, sure, your hand's like completely extended. Like, I mean, like a comfortable small phone. I don't know whatever happened to that. Like my iPhone 4S was pretty great. Like the size of it anyways was pretty great. So
yeah, it's true. But I mean, we didn't do as much stuff back then on our phones, right?
Oh, 1000%.
Like if you think about it now, like with the social media stuff, if you're like making a reel, right, in Instagram, a small screen would hurt. Like it's like, that's also why clicks is so popular, right? On iPhones, because people can reclaim that real estate for the keyboard, right? So I don't know. I kind of feel like if you're listening out there, folks, like whoever is making products, 6-inch screen on a flagship, give it to us. We want it.
Yeah, we'll be the guinea pigs. You and I, yeah.
Cool. Well, listen, Sabrina, we should wrap up. Do you want to tell folks where they can find you on the internet, all your social media handles? Tell them where you write and where they can find you.
Yeah, thank you so much, first of all, Miriam, for such a lovely chat and for having me on and for bearing with me as, again, our busy schedules. I'm super excited to see you in person, in real life, next week at Samsung.
Yes.
Which will also bring, I'm sure, a lot of fun content for your audience. Exactly. So in terms of me, would love to keep up with y'all. You can find all my coverage. I lead AI coverage over at ZDNet. So on our site, in terms of personal, I constantly update my Instagram, which is just Sabrina with an extra A at the end. .Ortiz, because Sabrina.Ortiz was taken. So Sabrina A.Ortiz. And then same thing on basically across the board. I update my LinkedIn again as a reporter pretty frequently, which is a bit more boring, I know, but same thing with Twitter or X. So yeah, you can find me anywhere. Best place to keep in touch with me though is Instagram and ZDNet's site.
Fantastic. Folks, you better follow Sabrina. And let us know in social what you think of this show. If you have questions, if you have concerns, if you have comments, you know where to find me, folks. I'm at Tankgirl, TNKGRL. Think Tankgirl, the comic book. Drop all the vowels. That's my handle pretty much everywhere. I'm mostly active on Blue Sky, Instagram, and Threads, but you'll find me pretty much everywhere except TikTok because I'm old. And it's too much for me. I get all my reels off of Instagram. That's how I get my stuff. But Yeah, so please follow me, follow Sabrina, and you know where to find the podcast. It's at mobiletechpodcast.com. If it's your first time here, you'll find the podcast on all the major platforms, so subscribe and tell your friends. And if your app lets you rate or review the show, please consider doing that. There's a YouTube channel as well. It's not super active, but I post videos from time to time, like things like hands-ons, and probably we'll have something for Samsung next week, youtube.com/mobiletechpodcast. And you know how YouTube works, like subscribe, tell your friends, click the bell, comment, all that good stuff. If you want to comment about the actual podcast on one of my videos on YouTube, please do. And then finally, there is a Patreon if you want to support me. I've mentioned it a few times now. There's a video version of this podcast. You can get it every week for $5 a month. And you get it a day in advance. So like before everyone gets the public audio version that they can download on their podcast app, you get a video on Patreon of us showing phones. Sometimes I leave bloopers and extra content in there. It's fun. And $5 a month every week. So consider that. Consider supporting me that way. And I want to thank our sponsor, Mint Mobile. So as you know, I'm constantly reviewing multiple phones. And while that's fun, it also means I'm constantly spending a lot of money for wireless service on multiple SIMs. That's where Mint Mobile comes in, and that's who I'm partnering with for today's podcast. If you also want to save money on your wireless service, switch to Mint Mobile. As tech-savvy early adopters, you've probably heard of Mint Mobile before, but let me quickly tell you how awesome their service is. Mint Mobile offers premium wireless for as low as $15 a month, and you don't have to sacrifice any coverage, speed, or data. They're built on the nation's largest 5G network. They keep costs low because they sell direct to you online. They cut out the retail stores and salespeople. Why should you pay more than you have to for access to the same network? In my experience testing phones, Mint Mobile delivers the same data speeds and call quality as the big three for a fraction of the cost. Switching to Mint is super easy. Thanks to their eSIMs, you can sign up and activate immediately right on your phone from the comfort of your home. No more standing around and waiting in line at a big wireless store. You can keep your current device and phone number and easily switch services. And if your phone isn't eSIM compatible, Mint will ship you a new SIM free of charge. All Mint Mobile plans include unlimited nationwide talk and text, lightning fast 5G, and free mobile hotspot. Mint will show you how much data you use each month and recommend plans that save you money. Mint also offers a modern family plan that lets you set up a super affordable family plan with as little as 2 lines. Use my link mintmobile.com/mobiletech to get premium wireless starting for $15 a month. That's mintmobile.com/mobiletech. Stop paying more than you need on your wireless bill and start saving big with Mint Mobile. And Sabrina, thanks for being my guest. I really appreciate it.
Totally. This was so much fun. I loved being on here. Again, thanks for thinking of me. This has been so great.
Absolutely. I'll definitely have Sabrina on at some point in the future. And folks, I'll have another podcast next week. So stay tuned for that. Until then, cheers, everybody.